Would you like headphones, Bill?
Do you want me to put? I don't mind.
Whatever you prefer.
I don't know.
You don't need them.
No, if I don't need them, I won't.
That sounds a bit weird to you.
A bit low. There you go.
Hello. Yeah. Dublin's hit music station FM104. It's the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and in studio is an absolute legend, and you don't use that word lightly.
No, it's true, Bill.
He's my favourite sports broadcaster.
It's not the same when he's not on.
Ever. If it's not Bill, I ain't watching. Bill O'Hurley, good morning.
Good morning, and keep on saying these kind of things. Our team might listen to you.
Well, I'm telling you, everyone says that. You know, whether it's Champions League or European matches or the World Cup has to be Billo.
Yeah,
and
yeah, but I mean, I understand why people say that, because, I mean, I've been working for more than 20 years with Eamon Dunphy.
Yeah.
And John Giles close enough to that, and now Liam Brady. So we're almost like a repertory company, you know.
Yeah.
So people expect us to be in position when there's a big event.
Yeah.
They're like the Waldorf and Statler, aren't they? The Muppet Show.
Oh yeah.
The two lads up.
I think that's desperately unfair. Listen, let me give you an example. When we broadcast a match live,
yeah,
and we're up against Sky, or we're up against Setanta, or we're up against the BBC, the figures are broadly as follows. We would peak at something like between 500,000 and 600,000.
Right.
Sky would be very lucky if they had 45,000.
Really?
And Setanta would be very lucky if they had 7,000. BBC or ITV might go as far as 90,000. That's the difference. And the difference is Giles and Dunphy and Brady.
And yourself.
Well, I'm only the kind of the facilitator. I mean, they've put me in my place if I pretend to be an expert, although I have learned an awful lot over the years about football.
At Bray Match have done an awful lot of things, and they've kind of done it well. Is when you kind of give your opinion, the lads sort of pretty much tell you, well, who are you?
Exactly.
We're here to tell you
but
this.
You see, I have no problem with that, really,
okay,
because I know full well when I start venturing opinions that they're going to cut me down on the basis that I'm not a soccer international, and I played soccer at a level that was much inferior to them.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to be in the same position, and I think the biggest mistake you'd make as an anchor is to imagine you're the most important person in the studio. The most important people are the analysts, and your function is to draw the analyst out as best as possible. That's what it's about, and I'm quite happy to be in that position.
There's very few, analysts or pundits that are the talk of the office or the workplace the next day. Did you see? It all went off last night. Bill, he said there's something to Dunphy and he went mad, and then Giles got stuck in.
And then Liam.
You know the buttons to push, don't you?
Oh, I do, yeah. I mean, as I said, I know full well at times that when I ask a certain question or present a certain set of circumstances, that there is going to be an explosion. It's what Brady calls O'Hurley's hand grenade.
That's brilliant. We're waiting for that. Is that when the pen comes across the table and all those
well, exactly. Or I get a bollocking on air from Brady, you know.
Yeah.
Has there ever been
but
a
it's
moment...
all theatre at the end of the day, let's be honest about it.
That's what I was going to say. Has it ever been when the cameras stop, and has there ever been someone leaving the studio where you're...
There was once, to my knowledge, in recent times. That was when Liam was appointed assistant manager of the Irish soccer team. He had to give a press conference and a whole series of interviews on the day of a Champions League match involving Arsenal. And we have a meeting, like there's a lot of contact with the team in advance of games, and then at 5 o'clock on the day of a game there's a big conference between all of us, and we determine at the start of the programme what the kind of elements are that will determine the result would be. But he missed it, and he came in very tired and cranky because he was tired. And we had decided, we didn't tell him this, but it wasn't because it was kept back from him, that there was a series of things about Wenger, and he was very offended by the kind of, we were putting him into the same category as Monty Python, which I think is even got worse. But nonetheless, he was very offended, and he was very seriously tempted to walk off. But he changed his mind, and it was Dunphy primarily went after him and said, "Come on, don't be silly, don't be." Is
this? We have it on our wall. We have sound effects, and is it?
You've jumped over the fence, baby.
Is that the famous one? You've jumped over the fence, baby. That's the one, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
Was it not that when they were having a row saying, "Hey, look,
just put on the headphones there for 1 sec, Will.
You've jumped over the fence, baby," Dunphy said to him.
When you hear it,
I think that was the time.
You've jumped over the fence, baby.
It could have been that one.
It could have been. I can't remember the actual
Yeah.
words, but it was the visuals of Wenger, losing the cool effectively. You know, he was kind of stomping up and down and throwing up his hands and all this kind of stuff, and Dunphy had made a kind of a sketch out of it, and that went down extremely badly. But that was the only time
Right.
that I remember recent there was any problem.
But everyone can lose their temper except you, really. You're the only one who has to keep
Well,
it.
it's not my function to lose my temper, you
Yeah.
know. My function is to make sure that they lose their temper if necessary. And my function is to keep it going if they do,
Yeah.
you know.
Can you tell when you come in, when you're sitting there, maybe Dunphy comes in and he's...
Bit cranky.
Yeah, can you tell it's going to be good?
Well, you see, you can tell in advance because sometimes the subjects that are aired on air we would have been talking about them in our conference meeting, you know, and we could feel that sometimes there would be tension, there'd be complete dissension in the various views, but
Yeah.
so you'd know that somebody would be edgy, and I'd be very conscious that somebody would be edgy, and I'd say, well, if I ask this question now, he'll blow up, so I'll ask the question and he blows up.
Have you any idea how many matches you sat in for? Or would you even hazard a guess?
I wouldn't have a notion.
Must be hundreds now.
I'm not doing as many as I did, though. I mean, I did soccer for years. I did rugby and soccer, and then I was taken off rugby on the grounds that we got the Premiership, and that was regarded as more important. And I did 6 years at the Premiership,
Right.
every Saturday for nearly 36 or 37 Saturdays in the year, plus whatever internationals, plus the Champions League, plus the Olympics, plus track and field, World Europeans and World Championships, all that kind of stuff. So matches, I don't know, thousands maybe.
So
I don't know.
did
Well,
McGurk-
I'd say about 1,000.
So McGurk picked up where you left off. Was that what happened?
Well, the feeling was that I couldn't do both. That was what I was told on the grounds. That the demands first of all, it'd be too big,
Would be,
and more importantly, at that time, soccer was considered far more important. The Premiership was considered far more important than rugby. Because if you even go back 8 years, rugby was nothing.
Yeah.
Apart from the international.
Gone through the roof,
Been
hasn't it?
transformed now
Yeah.
completely.
Yes.
So is there a moment that you remember of all the matches you've done so far that...
Well, I've often been asked that question, and the one that always comes into my mind, two come into my mind. First of all was the penalty shootout, of course, in Genoa.
yeah.
That was unbelievable when O'Leary got the winning goal, and Packy saved a couple of the penalties. And I remember talking to Jack Charlton afterwards. I did an interview for Christmas with him, an hour-long special, and I never found Jack easy to work with. I found Jack was an extremely grumpy individual if he wanted to be, you know.
Right.
And he did a very grumpy interview with me on that particular occasion, because he thought, and made it very clear, that he thought I was kind of setting him up with the English media. That he thought some of the questions were extremely unfair. And I pointed out I was simply following up what he said. I wasn't actually saying anything that hadn't been said already, or I wasn't trying to probe something that hadn't been said. But he gave no credit to O'Leary.
Really?
Which I thought was amazing, because that was, as George Hamilton, in that wonderful phrase, "The nation holds its breath," which was a fantastic phrase. We all held our breath. And O'Leary, who volunteered, who wasn't even a regular in the Irish team at that stage, because Jack didn't fancy his centre-half style, he took it. And I said it to Jack, wasn't it amazing that he had that kind of the balls in a way to come up? And he said, much harder to take the first one, he said, and he dismissed it completely.
It's strange, isn't it?
Very strange. I thought it very odd and very ungenerous, but then there was a background there, you know.
And is it difficult to come back live, for something like that, where the whole nation...
I've said this before, so this isn't the first time I've said it.
Right.
I always regretted that they didn't actually turn the camera on the studio at one stage, like when they were showing all the celebrations. Because people look at us as kind of, sometimes as grumpy old men, you know, and that we're very kind of, we're so concerned about our own integrity that we don't seem to enjoy things. Like, that's a view that some people would express, which of course is nonsense. We were dancing around the studio. We were delighted. We were in the next stage of the world.
Like everybody,
fantastic, like everybody else.
Yeah.
When we came back on air, of course, we had to be a bit more authoritative and less followers with typewriters, you know. But at the same time, I always felt that they would have got a real feel for us as Irish fans as well as Irish analysts.
I think it was the Germany penalty with Robbie Keane in 2002. They did go back to the studio afterwards, and I think it was Dunphy particularly jumping up. But they did show it since that exact reaction. Obviously, it was a different match. But there's also, anytime I've been, it was probably Croke Park. I was in whatever seat it was that you could see into the studio that you guys are in, and you could see jumping around and.
Oh yeah, I mean, but like everybody wants Ireland to win.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we're not there actually as fans. Yeah, we're there as analysts, or they're there as analysts, and our function is to actually say this is why we won or this is why we lost, and sometimes that drives people mad.
There was one time they went back to you and you were all wearing hats and you had the flags and everything.
No, that was the Genoa one.
Was it?
And that was me. No, I was the only fellow with a hat.
You were the fellow.
Because the only reason that I had a hat was that Tig Brun was the floor manager and his son had given him that, and I said, "Give me the hat."
Give me the hat. Brilliant.
Who's been, in your opinion, the most, well, not successful, but who's been your favourite Irish manager?
I suppose you'd have to say Jack. He wouldn't be a personal favourite of mine. I mean, but you'd have to recognise that he brought us to a couple of championships, that we were 2 World Cups and 1 Europeans that we never had before, and I never forget Dublin, particularly because I was in Dublin at the time. Dublin during the World Cup, the first World Cup in Italy, was an amazing place. I mean, if you look now at the papers and the depression and the crime and all that kind of stuff, and then go back if you could to those days, and there was a fantastic sense of joie de vivre and a sense of community, and people were dancing in the street, and there was no crime, there was nothing, and we walked with a great sense of pride. This is Ireland, It was an extraordinary time of self-belief, really, which we
could
never
do with
got
another
since.
one, couldn't we?
Huh? We
could do with another one.
We could, but the trouble is, I think there is a disconnect at this stage between the Irish team and the Irish punters.
Yeah.
I remember even, that even though Jack had quite a few players who were not native-born Irish people, I think the rugby team has taken over now as the like, in terms of international sport, as the connection between the fans and the game, and I think Ireland has lost out, and I think the FAI should maybe look again at the team and see, is there some way that they can connect more. Now, they've made a start, I suppose, by reducing the money to go to matches, which was one real reason for the disconnect.
They announced again today that they're cutting them again, the tickets.
Have they cut them again?
Yeah, it was in the Independent.
Oh yeah, they announced yesterday that they're cutting the price, and I think that's practical from their point of view, because you can, like, playing to half empty stadiums.
It looks terrible.
Awful. I mean, in terms of depressing as well. But then an awful lot, I mean, there aren't any great personalities in the Irish team in terms of the new players, and I think one of the things that I find disappointing about Trapp is that he's so conservative about some of the new emerging Irish stars in England. He says, they're not quite ready for me at this stage. And what I don't like about Trapper is that he has a system, and everybody must fit into the system, and he has it seems to me, no adaptability. If there are great talents coming in, if they don't fit into the system, that's tough luck.
Yeah.
But of course, I have to say there aren't always that many great talents coming into the Irish team either. But there are a few people, I think, who should be in the team and who aren't in the team.
Is Stephen Ireland one of them?
Yeah, but I mean, he kind of self-destructed in a way,
Yeah.
And he wanted to cop himself on, because I mean, he has hardly played in Newcastle. He got into trouble in Newcastle as well, as far as we could judge from the papers, in terms of some disciplinary thing about being out late or something. And he'd want to be very careful in terms of where he's going in the future, because he costs an awful lot of money. He's on 65,000 a week, and if you're not delivering for that kind of money, you ain't got many people wanting to take you on board. Maybe Newcastle will, I don't know.
Have you ever seen a video of you guys in action taken from a pub? No. So I wonder, would you'd be amazed by it? Because I've been in pubs when the three of you come on after the break to do your analysis. It's shh.
Are you serious?
Hard up.
This is this thing you never see. You're always in the studio doing it. You never see pubs across the nation. Shh. Oh, there's a row on. Oh, go on.
Higher up, don't be there. What's he going to say?
Yeah. Shut up.
You know what I found astonishing, though, and because I didn't know anything about it. I was one time in Sydney. Well, I was in Sydney many times, but this particular occasion I was on the rocks in Sydney, and I went into a pub, and everybody knew me. It was an Irish pub,
full of Irish down
there. And I said, "How the hell would they know me?" Yeah. And what I didn't realise is that I thought it was only when they transmitted the game to Australian places, which was just a game.
Right.
It was the entire programme. Yeah. So, like, if Dunphy or Giles and myself, equally we'd all have been well known,
Yeah.
Which I was astonished at.
There's a thing called
they're all very generous as well.
there's a thing called a sling box. You can watch it anywhere.
Yeah.
You can get RT or anything like that.
Really?
So
But yeah, it's mad.
I don't want to bring it up, but I've heard that you know there's somewhere down the
I
line.
read an interview where you said at the end of the European Championships you might
You can't.
cut back.
Well, I tell you this much. You see, you've got to take into account, I'm 72 now, and you've got to take into account, which is very important, that RTE will have to have a kind of a seamless transfer to the next person.
You mentioned Gabriel Egan.
No,
In that interview.
not Gabriel Egan.
No.
It'd be Maloney.
Darragh.
Darragh.
Sorry, Darragh.
Darragh would be
Yeah.
the logical, and he has been groomed as the successor, and I think he's extremely good. It's very much up to myself, as long as well, there are two things. First of all, if God spares me my health, I think I will continue.
Good.
The other side of the coin, though, is RT will say my contract finishes actually at the end of the Olympics, and they might say, well, look, you've done your 40 years, whatever, it's 45 years, and maybe it's time to move on. And I think they'd be concerned, and this would be a real concern. They'd be concerned that I wouldn't continue till I'd start clearly going down the hill. You know, they would
Right.
want me to go out at the top.
Yeah.
And we have to define what the top is.
Would you miss it? Of course you would.
I would, because I find my business, my full-time business is public relations, which is a tough business, and in recession particularly tough, although thank God we're doing well. But I find that very, very hard, stressful. And I remember I got a heart attack in 1984, and John Horgan is my cardiologist, and he said to me, of course, obviously television would be a contributing thing to that. And I said, not at all. I find television relaxing. And I'd come from a hard day in PR and go in to do a Champions League match in the evening, and I'd be tense and I'd be tired, and I'd come out relaxed completely. I find it relaxing, but that's because I have a huge respect for the fellas I work with.
Yeah.
And we know each other so well. I'll give you an example. About 2 years ago, I was about to ask a question, and I lost it. And I said, I'm a great believer in being completely upfront.
Yeah.
And no point in pretending anything. So I said, fellas, I was about to ask you a question, and I've lost it. I can't remember what it was going to be. And Dunphy came in like a rocket. He said, I am delighted, he said, because I wanted to ask you this question for a long time.
Saved.
But that's
Brilliant.
the kind of atmosphere.
You've
Really?
got each other's back.
Huh?
When it matters, you've got each other's back protected.
Oh, we have it as well. We're doing 4 hours live, and there are moments that just you have that kind of brain freeze, out there, and you have to just jump in for each other. I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I think very few people. If I look at the people who are analysing on various sports in Irish television, I wouldn't think there are very many people with have that kind of cop on, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or that kind of relationship, maybe with the anchor as well, you know.
Well, I think this is why the thoughts of you guys retiring or whatever it doesn't sit well
Well,
with people.
there's no question as the other fella's thinking of retiring.
No, well, it's just to us, we just wouldn't be the same. So as long as you can do it.
Well, thank you very much
Yeah.
indeed. I'll pass that on to the head of sport.
Do.
We'll send you the tape, Bill.
We'll send you the tape.
We actually interviewed Johnny probably a few months ago.
Yeah.
He plays a lot of golf. Do you do anything of that just to relax?
Oh, I do, yeah, I do. I play, but I have to tell you that I once played off 10. I am now playing off 20. Sorry, 21.
Right.
20.7. I have had a couple of bad years in terms of the game, and hopefully I might get it back now.
You get it back. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure to meet you and talk to you. Long may you continue
Yeah.
doing what you do. The Frank Sinatra of Irish broadcasting. Look at the suit on him. Doesn't he look a bit like Frank?
Except it's more Dunphy that gets under people's skin, not you.
Very good.
Listen, thank you very much,
Bill,
lads.
thank
It was
you
a
very
pleasure
much.
talking to you guys as well, and you're very generous. Thank you.
Cheers, Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Hurley. I'm a big fan of the Strawberry Alarm Clock. Okey-doke. Nod your noggin.
Everybody in love, go put your hands up. Everybody in love, strawberry alarm clock. Everybody in love, strawberry alarm clock. If you're in love, it's time to get up.
Good morning, Dublin. This is the Strawberry Alarm Clock with Jim-Jim and Mark.
FM104.